Babam, welcome back to the Halving Report podcast with myself, your host, Brad Mines. We're on episode 49. The price of Bitcoin is 38,000 US dollars or 46,000 Canadian dollars. The next Bitcoin block reward halving has an estimated date of March 17th, 2024. That's according to buybitcoinworld.com. On this day, Bitcoins generated will drop from 900 to 450. That means the annual inflation rate will go from 1.77% down to 0.84% per year. Today, we interview Scott Howard, blockchain and technology entrepreneur who currently resides in Toronto. It was really great to meet a fellow Canadian with so much Bitcoin conviction. Furthermore, Scott has been part of 4 crypto-related startups, and we get to ask him about them on today's episode. So let's get to it. How's it going today, man?
Excellent. Like I was saying on our little pre-roll there, it's been a beautiful weekend here in Toronto for the long weekend, and enjoyed some time by the pool yesterday, and we'll sneak some in this afternoon too.
Yeah, it's gotten hot real fast here in Canada, so it's been enjoyable. I just want to say thanks for coming on to the show. You're involved with so many different things in the blockchain space. Before we get into all of that, I just wanted to ask if you can give us a little bit of an overview of your early life and education, just for a little context.
Sure. So as we alluded to, I'm a Canadian. So I grew up in Halifax on the East Coast of Canada, which was a great place to grow up. And then got out of there my late teens, went down to the U.S., played some hockey down there, as us Canadian boys are wont to do. That kind of indoctrinated me a bit to the American way of life. And then came back up, went to Western, did political science and history, which I find quite useful while working in the crypto decentralized world. Of having an understanding of politics and history is probably almost as useful as being a quant. Mostly I did all those degrees not to do anything mathematical, but left that and pretty much spent my whole career in technology. First half of it was in big boring companies like Capgemini and Siemens, doing IT outsourcing consulting. So pretty much telling banks and manufacturers that they shouldn't do technology, would do it for them, and turn their $1 billion a year IT budgets into $1 billion a year IT budgets after we told them we turn it to 800 million, which was always lots of fun. Left that probably 2008 or 9. So, the timing of that was auspicious. It was pretty much, you're the cheapest and easiest consultant for us to get rid of, because you're the only guy on the team under 30. So they got their head count realigned correctly. And then that was pretty much my jump off point to being an entrepreneur. So I've been doing pretty much straight entrepreneurship tech startups since 2009. So over a decade now, which ages me a bit, but age me in more ways than one. And really the last 4 years of that have been pretty exclusively around decentralized technology, blockchain, Bitcoin tech since 2017. So kind of jumped in literally about 4 years ago. It was May 2017 when really went all in. And I think at last count, probably been part of the founding team, I think, of 4 different crypto-related companies. And from there, I can let you dive in and then give me some more. But my claim to fame as an entrepreneur is not that I've made any real money. It's that I'm still an entrepreneur 10 years later. So I usually summarize that of like, I've been able to make a living doing it, and not done any worse than if I'd stayed in corporate life, but haven't hit that home run yet that lets me sit back and do the Silicon Valley type play or the crypto whale type play. I got to work for my living. I got to work for my Satoshis every day.
But I think you have some good seeds planted, and definitely I want to dive into them. But just to back it up, you mentioned how you studied political science and history at Western, and it's kind of helped you understand the space more. Just want to ask you a little bit more about that and how it's helped you understand.
I think Bitcoin in particular is it's a political as much as it is a technology tool. It's an economic tool. So it's a conflagration of a whole lot of big, hairy topics that run our society. So I kind of look in that in the cycle of where we're at in human history, and how politically that's evolved and we've behaved. We do these cycles of centralization, decentralization, and we've been doing that since the first farm was established somewhere in what is today Iraq, around the Euphrates River or what have you. And so Bitcoin was a real response to the political agenda since like 1971, going off the gold standard and the inflation that's created, the economic growth that created. There's no denying that that this 50 years has been a massive expansion of economic well-being for a huge majority of the population. There's fewer and fewer people a day who live on $1 a day, even though that dollar goes a little less far than it used to when that stat became a stat. But I really just look at it like how do humans organize, to improve their quality of life, and the most clear organizer of what that's been for 5,000 years has been money, in whatever format that's been, and whoever controls the money controls the humans, and that's doesn't take a very deep political science degree to go like, well, what do they do in these things called governments? Well, they allocate capital, they extract it and they allocate it, and that's all they do. And then they are able to do that because they control a monopoly of force, otherwise known as. First, we used our money to acquire guys with guns. They can go beat up the people who don't have the guns, and take their money, so we can reallocate it, make their life better. And the question of how good is your government is, how nasty is that process? In Canada, it's probably the best process in the entire planet. Us and a handful of few other countries can think that deal's not so bad. The other 195 countries have a lot more questions than we have. But even as a Canadian, I have some serious questions. COVID has made that clear to my more normal friends.
Right. You're the co-founder of Fullstack. Can you tell us about Fullstack?
Yeah, so founded Fullstack about 2 years ago now. So I was May 2019. Starting point, really looked at what I had learned kind of 2 years in the space, kind of a Bitcoin hodler since 2014. So kind of looked at kind of the evolution of the space and like try to identify where's value created. How do you understand the flow of value through these decentralized networks, kind of both the political as well as economic and tech flows of those things. And it starts with the developers. Whoever's building the code is generating the value. And then the rest of us are just trading over top of that. So really looked at the thesis there is in the name, full stack, of how do we come down from which token economies, which coins and networks are interesting and have both economic, technical validity. So kind of the, dozen, at least at that time, I kind of looked at the universe of which blockchains are real and actually have at least potential of facilitating use cases. Kind of looked at a world of 12 to maybe 25 projects across the whole landscape that were even worth consideration. Started drilling down and trying to understand where there are actual developers inside of those pools. Wherever they are, that gets more interesting. And then really the layer up of that was, where can use cases be developed? So kind of using my experience, and what I'm good at is selling businesses, typically enterprise businesses, technology adoption. This piece of software will help your business go better, faster, and cheaper. And therefore you, Mr. VP of whatever, will make more money. Because there's no other consideration for someone working at a bank or at a manufacturing company or any other company that isn't entirely focused on, how do I make my quarterly bonus? I don't care if the building burns down around me, as long as in my severance package, I got my bonus. So how does your software, whatever it is, don't care if it's 5 monkeys in the basement or decentralized or from IBM, make me my bonus? So how do you frame the ability of these technology tools to line up with whatever the KPIs, OKRs are of that enterprise operator, to go like, I'm going to do one of those things better, faster, and cheaper. Ideally, all three at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
To get them ultimately to the measurable outcome that they're trying to get to, that ultimately gets them their bonus, which in normal terms should be aligned with the company doing better, but sometimes that doesn't happen. So try to find which protocols are interesting, which ones are kind of lacking use cases or have more potential in their use cases, which pretty much other than Bitcoin is all of them. And then trying to find ways to generate projects. So Fullstack Capital will go, okay, this use case makes sense. Here's a potential customer or consumer of that use case. Doing a lot of that business development operation, matching that up with kind of the software development operations, which kind of ties into another story I'm sure will pull me into at BlackX Labs of let's go build that application for that enterprise, get paid by the enterprise in traditional fiat, buy up some coin underneath that on whatever protocol we're going into, have BlackX Labs or similar partners build the application for that customer. Usually almost without fail, we'd find some kind of gap in the protocol infrastructure. So typically the developer infrastructure would be lacking in some way, shape, or form. If we're doing anything that wasn't on Ethereum. Build that, try and find grants out of the whatever foundation was running those protocols, so earn additional stake in the network that we're also buying underneath it. Build that use case, release that product out into the world. That would create real utilization on chain, and you do that, trade the news.
Right.
Earn additional stake, and a lot of those platforms are turned into proof of stake platforms and stuff like that. So we've got those nodes running and continuing to earn yield. And as of late, I've been playing a lot with the DeFi stuff to try and enhance that. Although it's been an ugly week.
Yeah, it's been an ugly week, and I think today it's bounced back 20% or so.
I think we got the bounce off the Americans woke up, and the Chinese did their work over the weekend, and then although there's a lot of other activity happening out of China that I think is interesting.
Yeah. Are you speaking of the recent announcements that they made of cracking down on miners?
Yeah. So I think a ton of the action is coming off the back of that. So there's, as I was learning, listening to some stuff over the weekend and this morning, it's the Friday Chinese Communist Party announcements. They announced them late for even their constituency. Mostly some people can't as actively hit the market against that political news, and then obviously that's even more challenging for us in North America, at least if we try to have a life and enjoy our Saturdays. Mm-hmm. So that kind of fluffed through, but it looks like the coal-based power being banned for crypto mining in China sounds like it's pretty legit and going to happen. So that's creating a lot of crypto miners in China, trying to liquidate their equipment and or move their equipment, and then the subsequent sell pressure on Bitcoin relative to that, and Bitcoin drives all.
Exactly. Yeah. So do you see that as a long term as a bad thing for Bitcoin, that this type of mining is going to be banned in China, or is this a good thing for Bitcoin because there's going to be more renewable solutions?
No, I think it's a very positive catalyst towards more renewable energy sitting underneath the Bitcoin hash rate. So I don't see that as a bad thing at all. Obviously, typically renewable energy is the most inexpensive and most efficient energy, especially hydro, which the majority of the hash rate in China is still sitting on hydro. So using less coal is a good thing for the planet, period, and it's expensive. So I think a ton of the points of view that are being expressed about both energy consumption and the efficiency of that energy, as well as the China centralization of Bitcoin, at least in the hash rate perspective, is all fear, uncertainty, and doubt. None of that holds up to rigorous examination. The whole example of like, a huge amount of hash rates in China. It's like, and so if the Chinese government decides to turn off that hash rate, the difficulty adjustment will occur. We'll have an interesting 2 weeks, of which we're going to have an interesting 2 weeks here. None of that's going to materially change the security of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is over hashed. It's got more security than it needs to protect itself from a 51% attack or numerous other attacks. 2 weeks from now, difficulty will adjust, most likely down. That'll make miners that have stayed online more profitable, and that'll start reflecting that all. That's a first order effect that will translate into the market action around Bitcoin. The difficulty adjustment is one of the core innovations and inventions that Satoshi drove into the protocol that makes it unbelievably valuable, and one of the most important inventions in human history is the difficulty adjustment. Very few people seem to want to discuss it. It's like, no matter how much we want it or don't want it, it will adjust to create the proper issuance rate and secure itself. If we turn all the machines off, well, okay, I'll hash it on my computer. Thanks for coming out.
Do you think Bitcoin will always be the pillar in the blockchain space?
I think it'll be the pillar in the economy, period.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly the pillar of the crypto economy at this time, without question. Hyper-Bitcoinization, all that kind of stuff is, I buy that thesis. I don't know whether I'll see it in my lifetime or not, but I buy that thesis. So I have this discussion often with my software-driven colleagues, especially at BlockX Labs. We have to talk about it because they look at the utility of the tools of what can I build with this thing, and there's not a lot you can build with Bitcoin. That's just what it is, and part of that is by design. Most of that is a feature, not a bug. So they get more excited about Ethereum and Polkadot and different stuff where they can go as software developers, build apps and other tools. At the end of the day, what does that tool do? The job of a tool is to make me more productive, to earn more money for the time that I'm willing to put into doing work, that I then can save in a store of value to buy that future loaf of bread, or that, more importantly, that future piece of steak, so that I can survive, or buy new tools so I can continue to perpetuate that process. And that store of value for all economic activity on this planet is eventually going to land on a Bitcoin, because it's the best invention of money we've ever had. It's, I won't regale Michael Saylor religion, because he's got it nailed of like, it's dynamically designed to store value. It is just the purest form of money we've ever come up with. And I don't see us reinventing a new one anytime soon. And so it's like the job of ETH or Polkadot or anything else I get excited about is to go up like, I'm going to ETH is operating capital that I need to use as operating capital, go generate value, generate profit. And when it's profit that I no longer need to recycle into my operating capital cycle, it goes to my balance sheet. And that balance sheet is 100% denominated in Bitcoin. and the overall ecosystem reflects the balance sheet is in Bitcoin. Once I'm done with it over here, making money, making more value with it, I take it over here and I save it. And the only logical thing to save anything in on this planet currently is Bitcoin.
Very well said. You referenced BlockX Labs a few times. Wondering if you could just tell us exactly what BlockX Labs is, and what problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah, so that was one of probably the first project I was part of the founding motion of in the blockchain space. Like I alluded to, I got engaged with Bitcoin and blockchain in 2014 at Decentral here in Toronto. So had a friend bring me down. Arthur Corey brought me in and showed it to me. May he rest in peace. He died at an early age from natural causes and an unfortunate bout of cancer. But he introduced me to Bitcoin. Walked me through the whole process, got me a paper wallet, the whole thing. So I essentially, here's my $250. Teach me about Bitcoin. By selling me Bitcoin in 2014, I was like, okay, this is just education expense from my perspective. So I'll shamefully admit to myself I was a blockchain, not Bitcoin, in 2014, kind of most of the way through even 2017, kind of going like, this is a super interesting technology that we can do a lot of stuff with. Kind of looked at that Bitcoin, oh, cool collectible. Somebody on the internet will eventually give me something for this, and whether it stays worth $250 or becomes worth more or less, I didn't pay any attention to that until like 2017. And then when I kind of drove in and we started looking at and evaluating new startups, I had helped exit a traditional insurance company and sold off the insurance tech company successfully. And that kind of gave me the summer of 2017 to figure out what was next. And it was kind of artificial intelligence or blockchain with the two obvious big motions in the tech world. AI, we figured out pretty quickly, was going to be unless we wanted to become mechanical Turks, it wasn't that interesting, because everywhere you go, it didn't matter whether you went into a bank with terabytes and data centers full of data, or you went into a startup with good data but not enough of it. The data quality problem just kills anything that was interesting, at least at that phase in artificial intelligence. So yeah, I can put something up in TensorFlow and it'll be super cool, but like only on model data, not your real data. You got 6 to 9 months of data remediation to do before it's tagged correctly or structured correctly to do anything. So we just kind of dumped that. And of course, the ICOs were starting to take off, and our observation there was, so it only looks like there's maybe 2 or 3 people behind this white paper. Only one of them even looks like an engineer. As far as we can tell, we haven't found any code, and they just raised $20 million. They probably need somebody to make some code for them. was the opening question of like, well, they just promised a whole bunch of software. They got 20 million bucks. They're going to have to pay somebody to write some software for them. So we went and started asking that question. So the problem we identified right out of the gate was like, all these ICOs do not have engineering capacity to deliver against, what turned out to be billions of dollars of capital that they accumulated against. Like, there was not very many engineers in the world who could do anything that resembled anything in any white paper in 2017. So we went out and started doing projects in that space, and a lot of that was, when we first started finding traction, a lot of it was with traders who were looking for what we kind of, I'll euphemistically kind of bucket up as, can I get the Bloomberg of crypto? Like what's moving where are the flows, what are the market caps, what's the traded volume, all the liquidity type stuff that you want to get into when you start to trade these ERC20s. So we started building a lot of interfaces with that, which like really anchored on top of the team's core strength of really being microservices focused in terms of lots of APIs. How do we call data from a block, from block explorer? How do we get this data off the Ethereum blockchain and bring it up so we can visualize it and make it more usable, which obviously started to build more and more capability around what is it? How's it work? What's it really do? And so from there, we kind of evolved out and started building infrastructure-based projects for projects like Aon locally here in Toronto. Did a number of projects for them, and then eventually kind of evolved in doing lots of work in the Web3 Foundation around Polkadot and things like that. So BlockX Labs has really gotten quite specialized in substrate. Obviously, I have a bunch of Solidity skills around the Ethereum world, and then I've done a number of other things around that. Lots of wallet development has been a key piece of that. So kind of like, past MetaMask, everybody else needs their version of MetaMask. And so we've helped develop a number of those things. And 99.99% of the credit of that goes to Jimmy Patel and Zad Ezekiel and Kush Patel around being the real core drivers of that business. I was pretty much just the business guy who's going like, this blockchain thing looks cool. Probably go talk to people like this. Let me go talk to them and see if I can get them to come back. And then the engineers want to talk to engineers, so I do very little. It's all about the grants and the processes, and all the protocols are all run by hardcore software engineers, so they don't even talk to business guys like me.
Right. Wow. You're an advisor with Lasso Finance?
Yeah, so Lasso is a project we spun out of BlockX Labs.
Yep.
So we were really looking, December, it was like, oh, this Ethereum 2 looks like an interesting thing. And kind of our observation there was, running nodes period is harder than everybody thinks it is. It sounds easy in practice, easy in theory, a little more challenging in practice. Like the real deep of like how do you run it is not overly complex, but doing any kind of scale and doing it reliably is a lot of work, as any DevOps engineer will attest to pretty quickly. And then, so we pretty much looked at what's happening in that ETH2 space, the overall staking in market, and kind of looked at that as a big opportunity, kind of play our microservices integration strengths along with my ability to go to market kind of in a more enterprise way of going to mostly the mid-market exchanges and going, all right, Coinbase is off of this, Binance is off of that, the rest of the top 10 are all going to offer essentially ETH savings accounts through ETH2 staking. There's a bunch of infrastructure you need to have in place that essentially we started offering out software as a service, blockchain as a service, however you want to think of it. We built Lasso Finance out as here's the smart contract, here's all the DevOps staking infrastructure you can provide, offering that to kind of mid-market exchanges to go like get in that game pretty fast, or you will continue to be a portal in which your local users onboard their dirty fiat, convert that to ETH, and then run off to Binance. If you'd like them to stick, you should probably come up with some more services. So we ran that out, pretty much ran that out. We don't think that market's very sustainable or very interesting. So it was a kind of a Q1 2021 project that we ran out, got a couple customers on, and then we're kind of like, okay, we'll put that in hibernation mode, or essentially run those nodes as they're continued to be locked up by the environment. So when they unlock, we'll probably have some more work to do around that, but that's got a number of nodes running for a couple of exchanges, which was a really fun project and kind of got me much more further down the kind of DeFi rabbit hole and understanding a bit more than just the basic yield of running nodes, which I'd been doing since probably 2018, and into the what the heck is Uniswap? How's it work? What are we doing there? And kind of got off my this is an interesting thing to follow on Twitter and read media posts, of which was my point of view on the whole thing kind of in the summer of DeFi last year. I noticed it in June last year, kind of, okay, this is a thing. Where are these guys getting 10,000x APY? But didn't really deploy any put a few ETH into the things like that just to play with it, but didn't pay much attention to it. And then kind of starting December, really start to dig in and pretty much been active since this quarter. So it's pretty much since April or so. I've been doing some DeFi stuff.
With everything that's happening in the crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin space, what's the most exciting to you?
Well, I think the 2020, the institutions arrived. So kind of seeing the institutional arrival, I think, is the most catalytic event, other than Halving. I've been here on the Halving report. It's like, okay, we're almost a year. I think we are pretty much a year into the actual this turn of the Halving. So that kind of tightening on the supply, combining with real institutional adoption, that makes this 4-year Halving period hyper interesting, because the dynamics that we've seen, it was a bunch of us geeks and retail people that have played in it, pretty much exclusively played it in that kind of 4-year 2016, 2020 window was like, okay, this is a thing that kind of most humans know what it is. 20 to 24 is the most sophisticated financial engineers in the world are using this technology and have, as I alluded to earlier in the conversation, their quarterly bonuses tied to it, which will make the behavior very different. So I think I kind of look at it, 16 to 20 was building that infrastructure so institutional adoption could happen. So, pretty much any format of fund, whether you're a pension fund, a hedge fund, whatever you want it to be, even like sovereign funds can now buy, sell, and hodl Bitcoin. Understand that from a technology infrastructure, understand it from a tax infrastructure, understand it from all the different pieces that they need to understand. And it's like when they're managing other people's money underneath, SEC or OSC or whatever European versions of the regulatory environment are, they have the right infrastructure to have Bitcoin on the balance sheet in one way, shape, or form or the other. There's zero excuse for any operator in the world not to be able to do that now. It's all there. It's all been figured out. It's just a question of, does that fit your mandate and your risk profiles and all that kind of stuff. So that was what the bull run and the bubble of 16 to 20 built. A ton of that capital was well allocated to making sure custody was figured out, making sure multi-sigs, how do I do multi-sig? How do I custody this? How do I trade off the different venues, all those different things to try and build that kind of sophistication so that, the biggest banks in the world and the most sophisticated hedge funds and operators can now trade Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin. That's a huge catalytic moment. And then we tighten the supply on them right away, which, economics 101, if you reduce the supply, the demand's going up, price goes in the right direction. And that's what we've seen. And that cascades out into all the other stuff. And like the DeFi moment, that was like, there's good 2, 3, 4 years worth of technology development, starting with Maker, that kind of rolled up into the summer of 2020. That's kind of unleashed a really interesting, powerful utility on top of Ethereum first, and now on top of Binance Chain, and we're seeing Polygon and all the different kind of layer twos of Ethereum that have unlocked a whole new use case for Ethereum beyond kind of what we saw in the last cycle, which is just ICOs. And ICOs say all the nasty things about them. They also kind of democratized and decentralized how you do capital formation to do a startup. How many people actually did earnestly their startups and they built them, and were the valuations correct? It's that, can write papers about that, but it catalyzed a whole bunch of activity. And now there's lots more engineers and developers building stuff, and business people like me going like, okay, they built something, what do I do with it? Than there would have been if there hadn't been, $1 trillion market developed. If it was still $100 million, I'd probably be selling artificial intelligence.
Where do you see Canada compared to the rest of the world in regard to crypto adoption and regulation?
Not in a bad position, but massively underutilized. And big part of that is the regulatory environment that we sit in is retarded. And I mean that in the dictionary definition of it, not the pejorative definition of it. Like we're disabling innovation. Vitalik wrote most of Ethereum down the street in Toronto. He spends as little, not a lot of time in this country for a bunch of reasons, tax being number one. The Ethereum Foundation is not domiciled in Canada. It was inevitable. This stuff becomes so a huge amount of intellectual capital and actual capital has fled the jurisdiction. There would be multiple billions of dollars of value domiciled, paying taxes in Canada, if not for the Canadian tax regime and the regulatory regime and the pain in the ass that it is for any entrepreneur to go through and figure out so if I launch this DeFi product, how do I report my taxes? Who do I, on what, with, by whom, what kind of certainty can I have around that? And have I created a security or have I not created a security? How do I contract this correctly? All the questions that go into, if I don't have $1 million legal budget and a year to spend, what is it, where is it, and how do I do it? Do not pass go, do not start a decentralized project in Canada. Take it to the Bahamas, take it to Switzerland, take it wherever. Still gonna have to spend several $100,000 on legal budget to go start a new project. But a huge number of the human capital, pick on Vitalik for an easy reason, he doesn't live here, he doesn't pay taxes here. He's Canadian. There's Metacovid was Canadian. Now he lives in Singapore. We've run entrepreneurs and innovators out of the country and along with the projects because we're not foresighted. Politically, we're not foresighted enough to go Our big five banks are really attractive and we love them. It's like, yeah, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Let's build an environment that can absorb and keep the intellectual capital here, because we're training, a huge number of the engineers who know what the hell they're doing in the market, of which, like, if there's 10,000 blockchain engineers in the world, I'd be shocked. The number is probably more like 1,000. And a bunch of them, like a disproportionate number of them, are Canadian. A disproportionate number of those Canadian blockchain engineers and blockchain innovators are no longer paying the majority of their taxes or any of their taxes in Canada, because Canada scared them out of the country. That is a regulatory failure, not a success.
Right. So is it actual regulation and part being part of the taxes, or is it regulatory uncertainty? What will happen in the future?
Uncertainty. The regulators can't tell you what they want to do.
Right.
And there's legitimately, like, they have a lot of things to do in this world.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a small, like, you ever looked at reverse takeovers on the TSXV? You thought ICOs were bad? There's not a lot of difference there, my friends. The lawyers and accountants get paid, and they get paid. They're all just doing this dance with the regulators. So it's like we have a very bureaucratic society. We're a collectivist society that's all about, like, how things worked yesterday is how they're going to work tomorrow, and we better check with the accountants and lawyers and bureaucrats and move that sausage machine back and forth. Is a huge piece of our economy. It's a big thing. Like, people just running bureaucracies is a lot of what Canada is. You can tell I don't approve of that, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's why we have a middle class, unlike America. So there is some benefit to it. But we look at, if I'm I am an emitter. Part of the reason why we shut down Lasso, can't run this in Canada. Don't know how I'm going to get taxed. Don't know how to contract it with my customers. I'm going to have to spend more time considering my regulatory environment, whatever alphabet soup of bureaucracies I need to go interact with to ensure that my business can be successful. And a huge amount of my margin is going to go out the door to my lawyer. And it's all because of uncertainties. Because, like, I got to spend, I know I've not done anything that's illegal. I'm uncertain about what I should report about from a tax perspective, and how and where and why. And to do that, then I got to go sit down at some point and educate some person at the CRA or the Ontario Securities Commission or whatever, but, like, here's how this thing works. And as educators in the space, educating a crypto native, technology native person about how some new piece of technology in this ecosystem works is not easy, much less someone who's like, I do commercial audit for a living. I went to Rotman, then I got hired by EY, and then I left EY, and now I work for the CRA to try and figure out whether that should be a CapEx or an OpEx. Can you show me how that works, please?
Yeah.
Good luck. That person's smarter than me. They got a better education than me. They don't have enough time in the day for me to go, like, so I stake my ETH here. What do you want to consider ETH in this context? Is this a capital? If I just dispersed a CapEx, am I operationalizing this? How do I want to mark to market? And when do I want to mark to market? When I said 32 ETH from here to here, and then now that 32 ETH is doing a job for me on a decentralized network that's not controlled by any other entity and not particularly controlled by me because I've locked it into a smart contract. Oh, by the way, it's generating a yield. Should I consider that income or capital appreciate? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, so having that conversation with the accountant and then the lawyer and then the bureaucrat is trying to interpret that into, like, a commercial understanding of what do we do about that? Well, the answer is F off and let us go do it and figure out how it works so we can innovate. And if we commit a crime, if I rip somebody off, let's talk. But good news is, blockchain is done correctly, decentralized. It's like, I'm not really able to rip people off very effectively, and it'll be very clear when I do, because it'll all be on chain if I engineer it correctly.
it would be nice to see the federal government come out with something that promotes innovation in this space and doesn't penalize people for taking a risk, right? Again, if you're ripping somebody off, again, totally different story, right? Scott, I'm going to open it up to you if you have any final comments or anything you haven't spoken about yet today on the podcast that you want to bring up. If not, just let us know where to follow you and learn more.
Yeah, so definitely encourage people. I've had high school friends. I've had the usual. You're the crypto person in your social network. When the bull runs happen, you get the text messages and the requests for conversations. And so I'll kind of reiterate a little bit of that. Let me do the magic incantation. So like when the OSC and the CRA and I have this conversation, it's like, I'm going to do the magic words of like, this is not financial advice. Do your own research. And this is for information purposes only. It's just the bollocks that is hilarious to me. But I kind of tell everybody, start with Bitcoin. Understand the wallet, get your seed phrase secured, just get a little exposure, take your lunch money, don't take your mortgage, and go just get exposed to it. And people I've literally had the conversation with this month have had a real entertaining 2 weeks. And it's like when you come back and ask me real questions about Bitcoin and kind of demonstrate and understanding Bitcoin, then we can talk about Ether. And then you might, you're not going to have to go too far because all the things we can do with decentralized technology will get really illustrated to you really well with Ethereum. Don't talk to me about Dogecoin. Don't talk to me about Polkadot. Don't talk to me about, Matic, any of it until like you got some concept about Bitcoin, some concept about Ethereum. Dogecoin's in a funny joke and all that kind of good stuff. And Polkadot's a very serious, super interesting technology that has legit new applications you can go do with. But like, unless you understand Ethereum, you can't understand what I just said. Kind of move your way through it very progressively and do it with play money. This is, try to understand what the heck's going on by putting $100 at risk. $200 here. You want to wheelchair, take $1,000. Go on. Like, this is speculation until you understand. And yeah, every free dollar that I have, I convert it to Bitcoin. But I've been exposed to this thing for 7 or 8 years. I've been working professionally in this space for 4 years. I'm playing a different sport than my buddy who wants to take money off of the sports gambling app and put it in Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Or more correctly, hey man, should I put it in Dogecoin? No. Put it in Bitcoin, get there, have some fun, get your knees, dip into the ocean and start there.
So I talk to a lot of new people that want to get into the space, and it's almost like they want to get into anything but Bitcoin sometimes. Like so many people just, Ether's the real, the real deal, Cardano, anything else. They just feel like, they want to outsmart the system. They want to outpace Bitcoin. And I preach the same thing as you. Understand Bitcoin, learn how it works before you start tossing all your money to a bunch of coins that you don't know what they do or what they're for before even understanding Bitcoin. So I like that and I appreciate that. Scott, can you let us know where to follow you? Oh, I'm glitching out here.
Howard Scott J on Twitter is probably the first and easiest front door to go knock on and hit me there. I'm a LinkedIn nerd. I like LinkedIn, so again, kind of back to my enterprise business life. So my kind of extension there is Scott J Howard. So pretty much everywhere I'm Scott J Howard or Howard Scott J. Easy place, but LinkedIn and Twitter are probably 2 social networks I'm most active on. And if you're interested in learning more and want to get into a project or understand what's going on, S Howard at BlockX Labs is an easy place to find me from an email perspective, and I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about this space and share what we can. And more often than not, I talk people out of doing stuff. Than doing stuff. It's let's get you into Bitcoin, figure it out. No, you don't need to build your own blockchain to go do that. Let's use Ether for that. Yeah, lots of that stuff, but very, very happy and open to talk to anybody. So hit me on Twitter or LinkedIn and go from there.
Scott, this has been very enjoyable. I appreciate your time, and I will be in touch.
All right, thanks, Brad.
Thanks for listening to the Halving Report podcast. Be sure to check out our show notes, like the episode, subscribe to the podcast, and we'll see you back next time.